Welcome. This is the Rip Griffin Show podcast, a baseball podcast for baseball fans of all ages. Now, here's your host, Rip Griffin.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to episode 62 of the Rip Griffin Show. Before we get into tonight's episode, please remember to subscribe to the show on all the major podcast platforms, rate the show, review the show, let us know how we're doing, and also be sure to keep an eye out on our YouTube channel. We've got some YouTube exclusives that we will be working on posting on the YouTube page. So be sure to head on over to that whenever you see it. Check it out. Leave us a comment and a review as well. So as always, I am joined by my co-host, Brad Chandler. Brad, how are you doing?
I am doing awesome. How are you?
I'm doing great. Another week in the books, and we've got a lot of things that have happened this week in baseball. So I'm excited to jump on and talk about tonight's topics, and we've got a special guest with us as well. We got Mr. Terry Cushman from the Bastards of Boston Baseball Podcast. How are you doing, Terry?
Not too bad. I'm not even used to saying my new podcast name yet, so it sounds weird when you say it.
Let me tell you, man. When we do the YouTube channel, it's kind of got that little. Wait, now I got to say the Bastards of Boston Baseball. I got so used to saying Benny and the Bets. It doesn't roll off the tongue as well and fluent.
Right. Yeah, absolutely not.
Yeah, I had to write that down before we actually got started just to make sure I got it right and I didn't call it Benny and the Bets anymore. So just a little note taking before we get started. But we got a lot of things to talk about in this episode. Obviously, of course, our team of the week is the Boston Red Sox. What we'll do is we'll kind of talk a little bit about the news, kind of everything that's happened over the past week. The past 48, 72 hours has been really interesting in baseball. And then we'll kind of jump into the second segment, which will have the Boston Red Sox, and we'll kind of talk about the team, get your views on the state of the team, and a couple players we like to do at the last segment. We'll kind of talk about them. A player that we've put on our Twitter poll that the listeners have selected. So we'll kind of jump to that at the last segment. But so, Brad, you want to jump into the first part of the news because it's interesting.
Jared Porter's wiener ended up getting him fired 6 years ago while he was working for the Chicago Cubs in the scouting department. He decided that he was gonna, what was it that you called it, Terry? I was listening to the podcast earlier today. The dilly hoo-hoo or whatever it was.
Hoo-hoo dilly.
There you go. The hoo-hoo dilly. So Jared Porter sent a picture to a female reporter of his hoo-hoo dilly, and it's come back to bite him in the ass 5 years later. I know a lot of people are talking about this. Definitely not appropriate to be doing that, especially in the position that he's in or was in. But it like all stemmed from like he was sending numerous text messages, and it didn't like go from 1 to 10. It went from he sent 60 text messages.
Yeah, it was 150 text messages roughly, but 60 of them went unanswered.
That is insane.
Yeah, so, a normal person would probably take the hint after the third or fourth message tops, but he kept going. And
150, huh? Wow.
Yeah. So, and unfortunately, I mean, he got pretty pervy and paid the price big time.
Yeah, at one point he was just sending pictures of his crotch and his jeans or whatever, and then it ended with like, well, he's going to whip it out. Oh, you're not saying anything? Here, maybe if I whip this out, she'll say something. Nah, man. Come on.
At what point in time does a guy say, well, here, maybe if I show her my junk, she'll talk to me? It doesn't.
I'm just going to be straight up, man. I don't think I've ever sent a female a picture of my junk. Like, if she wants to see it, she can see it in person.
Exactly.
I really don't want my junk all over the internet,
Exactly. You don't know what they're capable of, and it's just what goes through a guy's head when a female is not responding to you, but thinks it's okay to just, send a D pic. I'm gonna call it a D pic. I'm gonna censor myself, but I don't know. He
I like the
deserved
hoo-hoo dilly.
hoo dilly. Yeah.
Yeah, he kept that job for a whopping, I think it was 37 days, just long enough to make the Lindor Carrasco trade and then have a scandal and get fired.
Yeah, and this is the second year in a row that the Mets have had to deal with something. In January, they had a candidate who was hired in the offseason, didn't even get to, coach or manage a game. Last year it was Beltran. This year it's Porter. And I'm just hoping next year they can actually get through the entire offseason and get right into playing ball without a scandal.
I think the Mets would love to have, a scandal-free winter, It's like the Mets are going to be the Mets, though, There's always going to be something. It doesn't have to be a scandal. It could be a player meltdown. I mean, remember when Matt Harvey's girlfriend left him for literally Julian Edelman and he no-showed a game or whatever? And he was late to a playoff press conference or something, some type of media day, and that was controversial in 2015. The Mets just can't get out of their own way, and unfortunately, new owner. I don't know what Sandy Alderson's title is, but just the weird, developments just seem to keep popping up.
Isn't he the president of baseball operations? You've got your general manager, which is where Jared Porter was, and then Alderson was actually above Porter.
Yeah, he's basically the go-between between Steve Cohen, the owner, and the general manager. The Red Sox had a similar front office where Theo Epstein was the general manager, and then Larry Lucchino was the president, so to speak. And it changed a little bit because when Dombrowski came in, he took Lucchino's spot, and there was a general manager for like a season. That was Mike Hazen before leaving to Arizona. But Dombrowski was the guy, he was the Alderson. So it's weird how different organizations assign, what roles to what executives, but nonetheless,
they're basically still the general manager,
right?
And that front office, it is, yeah. And you got Chaim Bloom now. I know we're going to get to Red Sox later, but he's the chief baseball officer. He's the only one in MLB with that title. So, yeah.
Yeah. So the Yankees ended up having some stuff happen this week.
Yeah, so they were actually finally able to work out a deal with DJ LeMahieu, a 6-year contract worth $90 million, which is an average of $15 million per year. So, Terry, let me ask you this. Is this a good or bad signing for the Yankees?
For the Yankees specifically, I don't think it is a good signing because their pitching is really thin. They need to make moves, for that part of their team. There was talks about Luis Castillo maybe being traded for out of the Reds, and that would have bolstered them up. They did acquire Kluber, but I just feel like they really needed to focus on pitching. And I think for the next 3 years, DJ LeMahieu is going to be one of the best middle infielders in Major League Baseball. He basically already has been. But then, that 6-year deal takes him into his age 39 season.
Right.
So what's, age 37, 38, 39 going to look like? So I think he would have been better suited on another team, like the Blue Jays, for instance. But yeah, I just think Brian Cashman, the general manager of the Yankees, has just fundamentally not understood what it means to have a great rotation. And you got to go back a couple of decades to where you could say they had a stud rotation. Clemens, Pettit, so on and so forth. They just haven't had. They've had one ace type pitcher right now with Garrett Cole and with CC Sabathia for a little while, and nobody else to really go with them. So I'm really surprised that LeMahieu was the number one priority.
I was always I've been talking this offseason about what I thought the Yankees should do. And of course, me being a Red Sox fan, nobody cares what I have to say that follows the Yankees. But I thought that they should have moved Torres back over to second. They should have let LeMahieu do his thing, go wherever he wanted. Hey, you don't want to deal with us? You don't want to do this deal? I think it was $76 million was the first offer they were giving him. Hey, you don't want to do this? All right, we're going to move Torres over here. There was another shortstop that was available, and Dralton Simmons, I believe is his name. He played for the Angels. Great defense, horrible offense. But you know what? The Yankees already have enough offense. You got these power bats. You don't need power bats. And you could have easily just slid Hicks into leadoff. I know that LeMahieu's the guy who's batting over 3 whatever. I don't remember what his batting average was last year, but there was other ways to go about it, and then they could have ended up going after pitching. Kluber, I don't think was a great answer. I mean, whatever. We don't know what he's going to pitch like, but I think they could have gone after somebody else.
Yeah, the length of the contract is what concerns me because, like you were mentioning, Terry, when you get into that 37, 38, 39 age, the numbers are going to decline. It's given. It's just, aged. It's going to catch up with you. And the Yankees are making a big risk by offering that much money when, of course, they could have gone out and got pitching. Obviously, free agent Trevor Bauer is out there, depending on where he wants to go and what he decides to do. They could have. I don't know what y'all's thoughts are, but they could have, brought back Marciano Tanaka. I totally butchered that name. I apologize. But I mean, they could have brought him back as well. I know he's not the most flashy signing, but he's been in that organization for so long. Of course, then we kind of touched on Corey Kluber, which kind of goes into the next topic here. 1 year, 10 million, or is it 11 million? It's somewhere between 10 and 11 million. That seems more like a risk to me. Like we're just throwing money, hoping that this works. I don't know what you all think about it, but I think they're taking a major risk with Kluber.
It's a huge risk, and not from a money standpoint, but from a durability standpoint. I just kind of outlined how thin their rotation is. I just don't think the Yankees were a fit for Kluber. Kluber, I think, would have been better suited for like maybe an Atlanta team that has a deeper rotation. So if they lose him, okay, there's other guys to fall back on. The Padres, the Dodgers, pretty deep rotations. The White Sox, although they have added, to their rotation, but a team that has a deep enough rotation, I think, would have been better suited to handle the risk. Kluber hasn't pitched a full season since 2018. 2019, he had 7 healthy starts before being hit with a comebacker, and his season was over. And those 7 healthy starts weren't good. He had a 5.80 ERA, so wasn't pitching very well. And so I think there's going to be a lot of rust. I think from a performance standpoint, how sharp is he going to be? How much velocity is he going to have? And then how durable is he going to be? If he goes down, I mean, Jordan Montgomery is the number 2 starter for the Yankees. So I think the Yankees should have targeted someone else, an Odorizzi type guy. Bauer probably shooting for the moon, but I would have went after someone more durable. John Lester, how fitting would that have been?
Yeah,
to see him in pinstripes,
I would have been pissed.
Yeah.
We can kind of touch on Lester here in a minute, but yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. I I think the Yankees are just, trying to, maybe they're just trying to get in on the action with all these other teams like the Blue Jays and, the Padres, because the Yankees have been relatively quiet pretty much the entire offseason.
It's because they were spending their time trying to get their number one priority was DJ LeMahieu, and they should have been like, hey, this is what we're offering you. Like, they should have been like, this is what we're offering you, and then started focusing on pitching.
Right. I don't know. We'll see if this actually comes to help them or if it backfires. So,
yeah, we'll end up seeing. So Martin Perez was signed by the Red Sox. I know that we have talked about this a little bit before, Terry, but Perez signed for $4.5 million after the Red Sox ended up declining their option. So right now the lineup looks like Erod, Eovaldi, Perez, Pivetta, possibly Houck. What are your thoughts on the Perez signing, Terry?
I don't like it. He's very serviceable. He's basically a career number 4, but the Red Sox are full of number 4s. They needed an upgrade for sure. I think our rotation, our back end, is better than the Yankees back end. But the troubling thing about the Perez signing for me was it basically told me that that's it. They're done with the rotation now that they brought him back, because like you said, they did decline his option. And ultimately after re-signing him, they save $1 million roughly. And another thing I haven't really talked about yet on any podcast is I think what happened was the Red Sox were holding out to see what the schedule was going to look like. And I think the Red Sox were hoping for a reduced schedule, maybe not quite as few as 60 games, but 100, 120, something like that. And, with that would have came prorated salaries. And once Rob Manfred said, nope, full season, 162 games, full salaries, I think the Red Sox said, you know what? All right, we're just going to go the cheap route and we're just going to continue to rebuild. And that's why they settled on Perez. Because if you look at the timing, it was very shortly after Manfred, basically revealed that they would in fact play the full schedule. So I'm speculating, but that's why I think they signed Perez.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed at the fact that not disappointed, I was shocked that they declined his option at the end of the season. I thought he was literally the only pitcher that went out every 5 days. They ended up having like 20-something different starting pitchers throughout the season last year, and that was on a 60-game season. I mean, that's ridiculous. And one guy went every 5 days.
Right, basically, because Eovaldi got hurt for a little while there.
Yep.
And that is the one nice thing about Perez is he's very durable. And if he's getting shelled, in the third inning and your bullpen is taxed from a couple of games before, you can leave him in there anyway. They used to do that with Tim Wakefield back in the day.
That pissed me off until I realized why they were doing it.
Yeah. So you're getting, an innings eater, kind of like what Rick Porcello was, but a guy who's going to pitch better than Porcello will at this point in his career, but still a guy that's going to get knocked around and, probably cost you, a number of games. So pros and cons.
Yeah, definitely. I think we'll see what happens with the rotation. That was an interesting point that you brought up with the scheduling and everything, because after, Manfred said that there's going to be 162 games, now we're starting to see all of these signings, of course, the Padres kind of did their thing before that, but that kind of leads into the next big signing this week, which was George Springer going to Toronto on 6 years, $150 million. Let me ask you this. Do you think the Blue Jays overpaid for Springer?
Yeah, for sure. The annual salary $25 million a year isn't ridiculous. He's a top performing outfielder, hits for power, not a bad defender, but the number of years, I think, is a little excessive. I kind of thought he would end up in the 4 to 5 year range, with 5 being the absolute max. He has struggled with durability, throughout his later 20s. So, I'm a bit of a pessimist as far as whether or not he's going to be healthy throughout his 30s. I jokingly said that could be an Ellsbury 2.0 contract. I don't think it would quite be that bad, but I do think he's definitely going to be on the disabled list from time to time. But Toronto wanted him. They were connected to him all winter, and they had to give him that extra year to get him. And I hope it works out. I talk a little bit of crap about the Astros, so I'm not going to lie. But at the end of the day, I'm not a big Springer hater. So as long as it's not at our expense and, he has a great, run in Toronto, that's fine with me. Another thing, too, I should have brought up was the AstroTurf. I don't know how well that's gonna play for him either. So
well, you also got to remember, Canada's not letting any of the sports teams play, so he won't be playing in Rogers Center at least this season, and who knows for 2022.
Is it the full season? Have they ruled on that?
I don't know, man. I know Canada's borders are closed. Okay. They haven't released anything on when they're going to open those. So, and it's been closed since the beginning of this pandemic. So,
yeah. Well, I'm not a big COVID restriction guy, but if they're going to play in Buffalo, or that's fine. If they stay right in Florida at their spring training complex, so be it,
Yeah, one of the things that I had heard was the weather. Obviously, the weather would be nice in Florida in April and May, but once you start getting into June, July, and August, when the humidity starts to pick up, how is that going to play into a factor? Given that he did play in Texas for 6-7 years, also especially when you play at Arlington, when the ballpark in Arlington had was open, so it was hot, and especially in August, that might play into a factor. But that's probably minor. But it's just a matter of where are they gonna play in 2021. But the Blue Jays are trying to make some noise. They're trying to compete, I think, with the Padres with all their massive signings. Also, too, they're trying to compete in the East with the Yankees. But you look at this lineup, it's got Biggio, it's got Bichette, it's got Vlad Jr.
Now it's got Springer.
Springer also. And it's going to be a pretty powerful, potent lineup, especially when you have Springer leading off. I think that's where they're going to put him because that's where he's best at. But we'll see. The Blue Jays are starting to make some noise. They're trying to become more relevant again. I think, like you mentioned, the amount of the contract was probably a little much, but I think you have to kind of attract a player to Canada, to Toronto, because it's not really a destination that most players would like to play their career in.
I was kind of shocked that he actually ended up picking the Blue Jays because the most well-known fact of Springer being a free agent was the fact that he wanted to be close to his family, which is in Connecticut, and the Mets have been, tied to him pretty much the same as the Blue Jays. And I'm sorry, New York is a lot closer to, I think he's from New Britain, Connecticut. And that's probably about an hour and 20 minutes away from Queens, whereas Buffalo, that's like 3 hours away, 4 hours away. So, it's a lot closer than Houston, but still.
Right. So, Terry, let me ask you this real quick. With everything that has gone on with the Mets this week, with the firing of Jared Porter and the lewd pictures and whatnot, do you think that may have put a dark cloud over the Mets that ultimately led to Springer choosing the Blue Jays over the Mets?
I don't believe so. No. And it didn't really occur to me to really check to see what the Mets might have been offering, if they were in fact the runner up, because they apparently, by all accounts were the runner up. So I don't know what their offer was. Another thing I probably should have pointed out too is the tax rate in Canada is insane. Players are going to lose more money than players in, Boston, New York, Texas, even. So, that was probably another reason for the 6th year being put in there. It's also should be notable that that's the biggest contract in Toronto Blue Jays history.
I saw that.
Yep.
Just to let you know, the Mets, according to what I just found, the Mets offered him 6 years worth around 120 to 125 million. So, yeah, I see why he would have taken the Blue Jays.
Yeah, it sounds like it was about $5 million less a year, probably around 20 annually from them. But
all right. So there were 3 other signings this week as well, outside of George Springer. Springer being the big one. Your boy John Lester ended up signing a 1-year deal with the Nationals for, I believe it was $5 million. How did you feel about that?
Well, my exact tweet that night, it was around 9 or 10 p.m. when it was announced or something, and I tweeted out, I said, if Lester signed for $5 million a year or less, I'm gonna be pissed, because that's what we paid for Perez, $5 million a year. And in my opinion, a moderately washed up John Lester is probably still better than Perez on his best year,
Right.
And you got the leadership aspect. If they make it to the postseason, you got a guy, you can handle it. And so it's just another example of why I think the Red Sox aren't really trying. They're not really putting their best foot forward as far as players.
We'll get
yeah,
into that in
absolutely.
So, Rip, I'm just going to run through these real quick so that we can get to the next segment.
Sure.
Michael Brantley, this was a funny signing. Michael Brantley ended up signing with the Houston Astros. I don't remember how long it was, for 2 years, right?
Yeah. 2 years, 32 million.
All right. So 2 years, 32 million. What's that? 16 a year?
Yes.
But it was reported, I want to say like a couple hours before that, he had signed with the Toronto Blue Jays, and all the reporters had come out and said, hey, Ken Rosenthal came out, John Heyman came out. Nobody trusts John Heyman anyways, but all these guys came out, especially Rosenthal, and they were like, yeah, sources say that he signed with the Blue Jays, and then like a couple hours later, it's nope, he signed with the Astros.
Yeah, that one was I'm guilty of it. I put out a tweet that said that he was going to the Blue Jays. And then I'm driving listening to MLB Network or MLB Radio, that they're talking about Brantley had gone to the Blue Jays. And then Passan puts out the tweet, said, no, that's not true. And boy, that just went completely, it was a rabbit hole that we all.
And what did I tell you? What were the exact words I said when you said, man, I can't believe he went to the Astros?
Yeah, well, I mean, I pulled the trigger too fast. I mean, yeah.
You blew your load a little too fast.
I did. I'm gonna own that. I'll admit right to it. I did make a mistake. I got a little excited to try to put the news out there as quick as I could, and yeah, it backfired.
That's what happened with everybody. Terry, you got anything to say about that?
Well, never trust at honest Blue Jays fan ever again. They must be so embarrassed that they ran with that.
Did you see their tweet afterwards? He was like,
I did not.
Yeah, he's getting a lot of heat for that.
Yeah, and I've known a few things, ahead of time, and I didn't know if the source was legit, and I just rather not be that guy, so I just didn't do anything with it.
Right.
So oh well, he ended up signing with the Astros for what was the exact deal that he just wrapped up with the Astros. His previous deal was 2 years, $32 million. So basically just an extension of his previous contract. And I love Michael Brantley. I'm sure Rip feels the same way. And I think it's a good signing. Yep. And I'll go one step further. If the Red Sox were like, we could sign Michael Brantley, or you can give George Springer that big contract, I'm going with the value. Going with the value, and I'm taking Michael Brantley.
Yeah,
it definitely helps, especially with the outfield with the Astros, because there's so many holes and so many players that we don't know who's actually going to play what position other than Kyle Tucker. But anyways, to kind of finish up the news real quick here, Jay Happ signed a 1-year, $8 million deal with the Twins. It just seems like they're just trying to add depth to their rotation right now.
I love it because that means Hap's not going to be a Red Sox. I was so scared when his name was being drawn in with the Red Sox, and I know Terry was the same way.
Yeah.
It was something that I didn't want, and I'm glad that he signed elsewhere, because now that's another name off the list.
That's a big time overpay. I mean, I would take Perez over him any day, and he was $3 million cheaper. So was Lester. So I'm kind of surprised he got $8 million, and I think Hap's like 39 years old. He might even be 40. So he's getting up there, and his numbers have diminished. So I don't like that signing one bit, but like Brad says, at least he's not with us. So
right.
38 years old.
Oh, he's 38? Okay. I thought he was a little older.
Yeah, still old. So
let's talk about some Red Sox.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh my God. Yes. Okay. So Terry, earlier this week, Red Sox president and CEO Sam Kennedy had an interview with the Boston Globe and stated that the 2018 championship cost them and depleted their farm system. We have talked about this privately. I believe we actually talked about this on the Boston Baseball's YouTube page. What are your thoughts on what he said? And do you believe this is better than the approach they have made in 2018?
I think it's got nothing to do with prospects. Absolutely nothing to do with prospects. They've signed so far a starting pitcher, a reliever. I'm assuming Matt Andriese is going to be a reliever. And then they added Hunter Renfroe. They've spent $11 million on them. That's what all their numbers add up to for 2021. And they've got another $30 million sitting off to the side. So they're signing junk. And it's got nothing to do with prospects, because even if they spent a little bit more, if they got maybe Yasiel Puig instead of Hunter Renfroe, or, I can't really think of a second baseman off the top of my head. We're connected to Kike Hernandez, but what
about Colton Wong?
Yeah, absolutely.
I know that Christian Arroyo is the supposed second baseman for the 2021 season, but I would love Colton Wong at second base in Boston.
Absolutely, and you could make either one of them your first baseman as well if Dahlbeck needs to be optioned. So Colton Wong would be a great addition, and it wouldn't cost a ton. And it's just mind-boggling to me that they are settling for mediocrity when they do have the resources to be better.
And if any of our followers or listeners are paying attention to this, This is the type of stuff that you get over at the Bastards of Boston Baseball. Terry will say how it is. He doesn't sugarcoat it. If the owners are, being cheap, he's going to tell them, say they're being cheap. And I appreciate it. It's one of the things that drawn me into the show.
I'm not a homer. That's why we're different. That's why our numbers are getting bigger. And don't listen to us if you want to listen to a lovey-dovey podcast, because we're not lovey-dovey. When things are great, we might be, but not during times like this.
Yeah, last year and this year aren't going to be all that great. Rip, you got anything?
Well, I have to be honest. I really wasn't familiar with the Sam Kennedy and the interview with the Boston Globe, so I apologize for not being more abreast of the knowledge that or the information that's been going on with the Boston Red Sox. So I apologize about that part. So we can kind of move on to the next one.
All right. I'll let you take that one.
So we've all heard, especially on your podcast, that you've been really high on Jake Odorizzi. So explain what you think it would do to help the Red Sox rotation if Chaim Bloom went out and signed Odorizzi.
I think, to bring in a guy of Odorizzi's caliber, and to be pitching under a guy like Dave Bush, I think he could potentially have some of the best years of his career. He does have the potential to pitch to a number 2. Rodriguez in the rotation might as well, but Odorizzi just gives you a lot more stability from a performance standpoint. When Chris Sale comes back, to have him, Rodriguez, and Odorizzi, I think would be huge. If Tanner Houck continues to do what he did late last season, suddenly I think you got a very formidable playoff rotation. Are we the Dodgers? No, but we could be competitive. And if you go back to 2013, nobody foresaw at the start of that season we were going to win a World Series with John Lester, John Lackey, and Clay Buchholz, and they did. So
that was the year Clay Buchholz was getting babied.
Yeah, well, he had that. What was he, like 12-0, and then he had that infamous cuddling injury where he slept. He slept the wrong way, cradling his child, and then missed 3 months.
Yeah, my very first game that I've ever gone to was the day before the Boston bombing, and Clay Buchholz took a no-no into the 9th inning. He gave up one hit, and Farrell came out and took him out.
Wow, his pitch count must have been high. I don't remember that, but it would have been the second one of his career, if it happened.
I don't know what's worse, having an injury due to sleeping wrong, or having a rib break with after a massage.
Wow.
I think that masseuse was an elephant or something.
So I don't know what's worse, but I mean, if we look back at Odorizzi's 2020, I mean, he had a 6.59 ERA and only had one loss, but he only pitched in 4 games also. But
he had a back injury was the problem, and then he was shut down for the rest of the year, unfortunately. But
would that be a concern if the Red Sox were to sign him?
Well, I'm assuming he would have to, take a physical, like most players do, and maybe they would observe a workout. But he's fairly young and doesn't really have a history of injuries, so I wouldn't be too concerned. And I'm also assuming if he were signed, it would be a 2 or 3 year deal. So, I mean, based on most of that, I would say it would be pretty low risk.
So, while you two were talking, his pitch count in the day that I ended up going to was 109.
Well, 2013 standards, that's probably astronomical. It's 1985. He's just getting warmed up.
Right.
So we already talked about Martin Perez being signed by the Red Sox, but do you think that it was smart for the Red Sox to sign Martin Perez instead of going over Corey Kluber, or what are your thoughts on that?
I would have preferred Perez over Kluber because I'm just an extreme pessimist with Kluber's durability. I also would have taken Perez over J. Happ, Matt Shoemaker, some of those real bottom guys. But, obviously I was hoping they would aim a little bit higher, instead of him. But so was it the worst signing? No, but still left a lot to be desired.
And trying to like get onto the pitching aspect of things for the Red Sox, and the whole fact of John Lester signing with the Nationals. How bad do you think the Red Sox ended up missing out on him?
I think pretty badly. I mean, why wouldn't you? John Lester has made 30 or more starts every year since 2008. Obviously, aside from 2020, but extreme durability. The guy's never had a real serious injury in his career, and I would have brought him in and then just trusted that Dave Bush would have helped him kind of adapt to pitching in his upper 30s. And so I just think they're kind of wanting to just stay in rebuild mode and tank and get a good draft pick for the 2022 draft. It doesn't make any sense to me to go Perez over Lester. Maybe there was bad blood still from 2014 that we don't know about. So maybe if you want to give the Red Sox a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, maybe there was a little bit of bad blood, but
the bad blood was because of them. So I don't know if I'd really want to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, and the Red Sox aren't a very good organization when it comes to admitting they were wrong about certain things.
Nope.
So. Yeah,
I think they missed out on Lester. Honestly, coming back to Boston would have been a great. You call it homecoming. I mean, a
golden opportunity for Bloom to kind of win over the fan base a little bit after trading Mookie. And half the fan base is mad about the Cora signing, the rehire. So maybe bringing back Lester kind of appeases that demographic as well. Just a total blown opportunity there.
Yeah,
but so to kind of keep moving on with the Red Sox and everything. So, if you had your choice, what other needs do you think the Red Sox would need to fill?
I'd like to see another first baseman or someone versatile to play. Whether it's Colton Wong, like we said. Maybe an outfielder. An example I used that my co-host absolutely ripped me for, Ryan Braun, could play first base. He could play corner outfield. He's getting up there in age. He's 37, 38, something like that. But on a one-year deal, I might have went that route. I just think first base is really thin because I'm not convinced that Bobby Dahlbeck is a major leaguer. The strikeout rate is insane. What's it going to look like the second and third time all our division rivals get to take a look at him? I just think he's going to be super prone to strikeouts. And Michael Chavis is not a major leaguer, and he would be the number 2 guy to go into first base. So I think we're extremely thin there. I'd like to see another piece. And then our outfield is pretty shoddy. I mean, you've got Verdugo, who's very good, and then after that you got Renfroe, who could be DFA'd halfway through the season. He's a career 290 on base percentage guy. And then you've got Andrew Benintendi, who, as far as I know, is still out in Neverland. Just completely lost. So and Chavis could slot in out there, but I just said I don't think he's a major leaguer. So extremely thin in the outfield. Kike Hernandez would make it a little bit better. Yasiel Puig is an affordable option. I'm not quite sure. It's been such a busy week, but I'm sure there's probably, another option they could also look at, in the outfield. They're a dime a dozen. So
Right.
first base, outfield, outside of pitching is where I'd like to see a little more reinforcement.
So outside, so you and I talk a lot, with the fact that I work with you and the Bastard of Boston Baseball, the YouTube page, and we are constantly talking. I probably talk to you more than I talk to anybody else on like Facebook, Twitter, and I want to kind of gauge with the quiet off season with the Red Sox. What are your expectations into the 2021 season?
I think they'll add another piece, whether that's Hernandez or whatever. But I think at best we're a third place team. And even being in third place, we could still be sub 500, So I'm an extreme pessimist right now. Short of an Odorizzi signing, I would probably put the Red Sox in the 76 to 79 win bracket and well out of the playoffs.
Okay.
Wow.
I kind of, like I said, I talked to you more than I probably talked to anybody else on online, and I'm in your group chat with the Bastard of Boston Baseball as well. And I saw Andrew, one of your hosts or co-hosts on the show. He's expecting around 86 to 80. Was it 87?
No, I think he said 82 to 85. Somebody else might have given the figure you did, but
yeah, I don't see them being anywhere close to that. But
he's pretty optimistic, and
he really is.
I don't mind being wrong. So if he ends up being right, more power to him.
I really am hoping he's right. Being a Red Sox fan, I am hoping he's right. Rip, you got anything?
Yeah, I was curious to see what you were going to say because a lot of the reaction is let's get back to the postseason. But it seems like a lot of the Red Sox organization are shooting for a rebuild. Like you mentioned, shooting for that number one top draft pick. The Benintendi thing is kind of interesting because it seemed like it was kind of talked about that they might shop him, but now it seems like it's to the point where they really want to find a different place for him. They really don't want him anymore. I don't know if that's true or not, but prospects is probably something that the Red Sox need to get. And I don't know. It's just interesting to kind of hear your perspective on the team and where you feel like the state of the team is heading into 2021. So
yeah, I just, like I said, I think it's more mediocrity, and you look forward a year beyond 2021. A lot of bad contracts come off the books, and hope to God at that point they'll end the misery and start really putting some pieces on this team, and by then we might have a look at some of our top prospects as well, and maybe they would be a big part of the solution, but won't be 2021.
Are they still paying Manny Ramirez?
2026.
Yeah,
wow.
that one's inconsequential though. That's like $2 million a year, but
that's like dimes to us.
We're paying David Price $16 million for the next 2 years to play for the Dodgers. JD Martinez, I mean, he's coming off a bad year. I mean, a lot of people will shut up about that if he starts going crazy again, with the power hitting. But at the moment, that's kind of an ominous contract. He's got this year and next year. And maybe Pedroia's money will go away. They might be working out some type of a buyout this month on that. If they didn't, that would be roughly 12-13 million that they're on the hook for. So you add up all of that, you're looking at close to $50 million between Price, Martinez, and Pedroia.
Okay. So kind of finish up the last segment, we kind of take a couple players that we put on our our Twitter poll, and one is a guest fan favorite. So we kind of want to touch on Big Papi, David Ortiz. We know that he's known for his smile and his clutch inning, but what Papi moment will you remember the most?
Has to be the grand slam in Game 2 against the Tigers. When Torrey Hunter went ass over tea kettle over that bullpen wall. That's the biggest, but where he was truly immortalized, I think, was in the 2004 postseason against the Yankees in the ALCS. Game 4 went into the 14th inning. It ended on a Big Papi walk-off. The very next night, another marathon game, 13 innings, so just one less than the night before, ended on a Big Papi walk-off. I think that's truly where he was immortalized. And you had the big grand slam, like I said, against the Tigers. And then, the next week in the World Series, he hit 688. And that number was higher. He was hitting like in the 800s until like Game 5. It was ridiculous. I'm like, why are you guys pitching to him? I'm like, keep doing it, please. But why? And he just destroyed them single-handedly.
Yeah, I have to say I agree 100%. The most iconic thing that I've seen that had to do with David Ortiz was the Torrey Hunter when he hit the grand slam and Torrey Hunter just went over. I remember exactly where I was. I remember watching that cop put his hands up in the air and not even care that Torrey Hunter. You had the bullpen catcher sitting there like waiting for the ball and whatnot. And it was great because Torrey Hunter just went over and nobody gave a damn. Nobody cared.
Yeah.
Nobody cared.
Yeah, and it was a really pivotal moment, because if he doesn't hit that grand slam, that was, I think, in the 8th inning, the Red Sox probably lose that game. They would have been down 2-0 with Verlander the next night. I don't think the Red Sox win that series being down 2-0. So thank goodness he hit it. And, I love Torrey Hunter, not just for that, but, it was a hell of an effort. And you had the bullpen cop, with the iconic, hands in the air. And,
like, I just don't care.
Yeah.
And the funniest thing about all of that is, who was it? Joaquin Benoit?
Yeah.
The pitcher he was facing. He had Ortiz's number, and I don't remember exactly what pitch it was, but Ortiz was talking about it, and he was like, he always throws this pitch to me, man. He always throws this pitch to me, man. And I always miss it, and I'm going to just wait on it. I'm going to wait on it. And lo and behold, he waited on it, and bam, there it goes.
Yeah, he absolutely did. And there'll never be another player like him, just larger than life. And Ted Williams is the greatest offensive player to ever play for the Red Sox. But I think Big Papi is the most meaningful. He ultimately means more to the franchise, because 2 of those World Series don't happen, without him. And I can't imagine. I wish my grandparents got to see him play.
Right.
See, my grandparents were, everybody on my side of the family, they were Yankee fans. So my dad and I were the Black Sheeps.
I would have just got new grandparents.
So here's a question for you. This is kind of a dumb question. Who are your favorite, like, I would say like 3-4 hitters, right? Was it 3-4 or 4-5? Who are your like favorite 3, 4, and 5 hitters for the Red Sox, like back to back?
Yeah, I mean,
if you don't Manny and fucking
Papi, yeah, you'll never see anything like that again. And Manny was roided up, obviously, and you could even say, Poppy was for at least a couple of those years, but you'll never see that type of clutch hitting, that type of power. It just, you won't. I mean, in 2018, it was Martinez and Moreland, like it was good enough, but it wasn't Manny and Poppy.
Yeah. So I know that we've got to get going and get through this, but I had a question, and it kind of goes two and two with what you had just said. Do you think that Ortiz will be a Hall of Famer, or do you think the reports of him testing positive will ruin that?
If you asked me this a couple months ago, I probably would have said no, he's not going to get in. But if either Bonds or Clemens gets in this time around, I don't know what they're polling at. I know it's close. If one of them gets in, they probably pave the way for Big Papi to get in. And I think he's kind of looked at as a lesser offender than some of those other guys. So I think I would, if you're going to put a percentage on it, I'd say there's probably a 60% chance David Ortiz gets in. Now, do I think he should be in? Unfortunately, people assassinate me for this. I'm an extreme anti-steroid guy. I vehemently do not want Bonds and Clemens in the Hall of Fame. And I'm so dead set against them getting in. I couldn't in good conscience vote for Big Papi as well.
Wow.
So I just looked it up. It's Bonds has got 74.2%.
Oh, jeez.
And
he's right there.
75 is what will get him. Okay.
That's what he needs. So he's right about there. I guess a lot of the late ones that come in typically are no votes. So take that for what it's worth.
Well, it would definitely be interesting because Papi's got the numbers. He's a 10-time All-Star, Silver Slugger, World Series champion, obviously. And of course, he's got a career 286 batting average. So hopefully he'll get in. We'll see what the writers of the say. But Brad, you got anything else on Big Papi?
I mean, he said everything, the smile, the clutch hitting, the homers, the grand slams, Papi's Papi, man. This is our effing city, That was a great speech. Thanks, Cooter. I ain't got anything.
So our fan poll of the week, our player of the week was Pedro Martinez. So I'm going to ask you this question here, Terry. Which player is better, Pedro Martinez or Roger Clemens?
Well, Clemens had a longer career and, won 5 or 6 Cy Youngs, a ridiculous number of them. A little bit of controversy there with, of course, the steroids. I'm going to give it to Pedro, even though it was a little bit shorter, because I am 1,000% confident Pedro did not do steroids. He was this little scrawny guy who could gas it, and he was shutting these guys down at the height of the steroid era. The guy was unbelievable, and I think he meant more to the Red Sox franchise. I love the fact that he would never allow guys to crowd the inside of the plate because, they were getting drilled if they did. And it sucks that Don Zimmer had to be the guy, but, but that was like the height of the Red Sox rivalry with the Yankees. I mean, there was just so many more iconic moments with Pedro. I got to give it to him.
Didn't Zimmer come out and say that he deserved that? Or whatever.
I don't know.
I thought I read something. It was like everybody was giving Pedro crap for throwing down this freaking old guy, but it's like, man, he like ran at him. What was he gonna do? Like he didn't hit him. He just like sideswiped him.
He kind of guided him down. He sidestepped and then kind of guided the old man down, and I feel bad. I mean, Manny Ramirez like chucked a guy, right before he got traded. That's a lot more savage to me. But I like Pedro. I wish we could have kept him longer, and I wish 2003 didn't happen because it would have been so cool, to have a World Series. My favorite moment as a baseball fan. This was like my first big moment because, as Brad knows, baseball wasn't my first sport. I grew up in a NASCAR family, and then I was a boxing fan. Kind of found that on my own, and then as all my heroes retired, only then did I get hardcore into baseball. But back when I was a little more fair weather, 1999, the All-Star Game, Pedro struck out McGuire and Sosa back-to-back, the 2 home run kings from the season before. And it was at Fenway, and the crowd was just electric. I was never more in awe of anything in baseball as I was Pedro on that night. Wow. The guy was unbelievable. And yeah, some people are going to say Clemens. I got to give it to Pedro. And if they want to call me a hater, oh well.
I'm 100% behind you on that one. I'm not a hater. I believe Pedro was the better pitcher. I believe he actually meant more to the Red Sox than Clemens did. Clemens did great while he was playing for the Red Sox, and I have to believe he wasn't doing any roids while he was on the Red Sox. I believe that started once he was on the Toronto Blue Jays. Maybe not until the Yankees, but I don't think he was doing that stuff.
It happened in Toronto because his fastball velocity was dipping hard. He just wasn't able to pitch in the upper 90s, and then suddenly he found it again. And I think that was probably HGH, that he started with and graduated to whatever the steroid buffet was. And so I would have to agree that, with the Red Sox, he probably was clean, but
yeah, I loved Roger when I was younger, just as a player, not even the fact that he played for the Red Sox or anything, but I loved Pedro because he was with the Red Sox, and he was, he threw, like you said, he threw you inside if he had to. You weren't crowding that plate. You were gonna get beamed. So
one thing I found interesting about Pedro, he was on the Rich Eisen show about 2 years ago, back in 2018, and he said that he asked the Expos at the time to trade him to the Yankees. He asked him 3 times, and it never happened. And of course, he ends up in Boston shortly after. But that was something interesting. I never knew that he actually wanted to go to the Yankees because he was a fan of the Yankees. He liked the Yankees. And he said that when he saw his teammates getting traded, that's when he realized he couldn't be a fan anymore and he had to be a ball player. And that's where we saw him kind of take it to the next level there in Boston. So that was interesting. I didn't know that about Martinez. So, Brad, you got anything else on Pedro Martinez?
Besides the fact that, he had 18 years in the big leagues, he played for the Sox. He had a career 2.93 ERA. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2015. He was an 8-time All-Star, 3-time Cy Young Award winner, a Triple Crown winner for pitchers in 1999. He helped the Sox win the first World Series in 86 years in 2004. And one thing I thought was super cool was the fact that he was the All-Star MVP in 1999 when they had the All-Star game at Fenway. So that outside of all of that, I don't think I can say anything.
Hey, that's why he's a Hall of Famer. So, Terry, one last question, and we'll close out the show here. What is your favorite all-time baseball movie?
Moneyball. I like it.
Okay.
I watch it, a couple of times during the winter at least, and I wasn't really big into fantasy baseball until I watched that movie, and now I love it. And I just thought, Brad Pitt was a good guy to play Billy Bean, but the guy who made that movie so epic, I think, was Jonah Hill. Because how do you go from Superbad to playing Peter Brand? I was just, because when I saw him pop up, I'm like, oh my God, this guy. And then he was brilliant the whole movie.
Yeah, I love Moneyball. Good movie. On the one, I think it was someone on your show. I'm not sure if it was you or if it was someone else, but I found it funny. Someone had said, I find it funny that this movie was about spending, as little to no money, and they went out and got one of the biggest actors.
That wasn't me, but that's a good point.
Oh, well, Moneyball is a good one. It's one of my favorites. Of course, you got The Sandlot as well. It's probably one of the.
That's always going to be my favorite. Wendy Peppercorn, when Squints is down there, he's drowning. She pulls him out and gives him the kiss, and he's just like,
yeah, yeah.
Good stuff there. But Terry, we appreciate you coming on the show, talking some Boston Red Sox baseball with us, talk about the news, and kind of give us a little bit of your insight of your thoughts on the team and where it's going in 2021.
Go ahead and give your show a plug.
Yeah, I mean, you can find me on the Bastards of Boston Baseball, and very spirited show. We've got quite the cast of characters, and I'm only 1/3 of the show, when I'm on, but it's entertaining, and I drive a truck, so I'm always looking for content, so I'll pull up a podcast. So, if you're in a similar situation, or maybe you hit the gym every day and you want to listen to something new, we do at least a couple of shows a week. So, but listen to these guys first. This is your audience, and absolutely.
But we definitely appreciate you taking the time to come on and, like I said, plugging your podcast, but also talking Boston Red Sox with us. Yeah,
absolutely. Whenever you guys want to grab me for anything, I can easily fill a segment or two. So
very much appreciated, Terry.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. We thoroughly appreciate you tuning in, downloading, subscribing. Let us know how we're doing. Rate the show. Thanks to Brad always. And that's going to do it for this episode. So take care, guys.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Rip Griffin Show. Make sure to subscribe to the show on all the major podcast platforms. Follow Rip on Twitter @RipGriffin2.